see John Pryor walking past that long line of trial watchers. I spoke with the person that lined up since 7 a.m. Take a listen. Why be here today?
Yeah, so I have been following it. I found that it was an interesting case. I happened to be in town taking a break, and so I just wanted to come to opening trials to hear really what the defense has to say. I feel like the prosecution, it might be like a repeat of the Lori Vallow trial, but I think that hearing what John Pryor is putting out there is going to be super interesting. So that's why I'm here this morning.
Thank you. And all those folks telling me in the gallery today here at the courthouse that it is a tough day of testimony, and their hearts are going out to the victims' families that are having to listen to this. And ironically, Ray Hermosillo, who's still under direct, it was on April 11th last year that he was giving this same testimony in that same courthouse for Lori's trial.
Wow, almost a tragic coincidence, but it is all for a purpose. They want to see justice for those kids and for Tammy Daybell. Matt, before we let you go back into the courthouse, I wanted to see if you can give our viewers an understanding of who's on this jury. What's the breakdown? What information do we have?
Right, Julia, as I've reported over the past few days, you know, the jury selection wrapped up after 6 days. It was more than 57 people that were qualified for this death penalty case. Let's put it on your screen. 18 people are in the jury box hearing the case. That includes 10 men and 8 women, all Caucasian, which is representative of this area. But we don't know who those 6 alternates are until the end of all of this tough testimony.
And I know they went through a rigorous jury selection process over those 6 days. Matt Johnson, thank you so much for that report. Let's bring in our guest for this hour, trial attorney and family law attorney Michelle Thomas, standing by. Michelle, this is one of those cases that has captured so many people's attention, but we're seeing these 2 trials because they aren't going to trial together. Sometimes we do see joint trials when there's a husband and a wife who are accused of the exact same crimes, the killing of these 3 individuals. Tell me about whether or not you think they should have been separate, especially with the similarities of these cases and the evidence and the undertaking of bringing all of this in front of another jury.
Yeah, good afternoon, Julia, and thanks so much for having me. So you're right. I mean, there are a lot of similarities here and a lot of overlapping evidence, and it is heartbreaking for these witnesses and the families to have to endure hearing all this evidence again. However, when you have a situation where there's co-defendants who could easily blame the other, which it appears as though Chad Daybell's strategy may be to blame Lori for the murders of the 2 young children and Tammy Daybell, that's where there's a conflict of interest, and that's where there's really a divergent approach to the trial itself. And I think that's the reason why they needed to bring these 2 cases separately, because of that very apparent conflict of interest. Even though Lori didn't take that approach in terms of blaming Chad, I think Chad may very well take that approach against her.
Oh yeah, will he take the stand to explain it? Because we did hear that in the opening statement that his lawyer made, pointing the finger very vehemently at Lori Vallow Daybell. Let's take a look back. Matt Johnson's back in the courthouse, but he did file this report with a look back at the case against Lori and Chad Daybell.
Is Lori Noreen Vallow not guilty or guilty of first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan, of Joshua Jackson Vallow, of Tammy Daybell? Answer, guilty.
In May 2023, Lori Vallow Daybell was found guilty by an Idaho jury for the murders of her children, Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow, and conspiring to kill her husband's first wife, Tammy.
Chad, call me. I'm going to tell you what you fixing to get, boy.
I think the evidence is stronger against him.
Lori was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Husband Chad faces the death penalty if he's convicted.
Chad, where are Lori's kids? What happened to Tammy, Chad?
Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell were married to other people when they met at a spiritual conference and began an affair in 2018.
No, she was into him. She was way into Chad. She was infatuated with him, big time.
By the end of 2019, her husband and his wife were both dead. Her kids were missing, they were married, and their friends were concerned.
I was wondering, where are you guys?
We're just hanging out.
that was the perfect storm when she met Chad.
Tylee and JJ's remains were found 6 months later, buried in the backyard of Chad's home.
Chad Daybell was taken into custody and booked into the Fremont County Jail.
Prosecutors had planned to try the cases together, but when Chad waived his right to a speedy trial, Lori's case went first.
This was all a plan. Like I said at the beginning, a plan for them to be together without obstacles. And those obstacles were Tylee Ryan, JJ Vallow, and their spouses, Charles Vallow and Tammy Daybell.
During her trial, the state claimed that Lori was the mastermind behind the murders and manipulated Chad through emotional and sexual control. Her defense argues that Chad was the mastermind.
Is Lori a leader or is she a follower of Chad? She so wants to be a leader, but she's not leading anyone. She's following Chad.
Chad Daybell didn't testify at Lori's murder trial, and his defense is expected to blame her as he faces the death penalty.
I can just about guarantee everybody right now, Chad's attorneys are going to throw her under, not a bus, but a steamroller.
Michelle Thomas still with us. The steamroller we've seen start to roll inside of that courtroom in the way that this defense laid out their opening statement. And perhaps we'll see it in the cross-examination in the way that they handle the detective who's on the stand. Can you talk about how much more difficult a death penalty case is for attorneys, especially when they have to wear almost two hats because there's going to be a guilt phase and then if there's a guilty verdict, a penalty phase?
Yeah, there's a significant, I mean, the stakes are higher, right? I mean, you're talking about your client's life that's on the line here and on your shoulders. And so there's a significant, I think, burden that is associated obviously with the death penalty case. And then to your point, there are two phases if in fact he is found guilty. And so at every turn, the defense counsel has to be thinking about how the evidence will impact not just the penalty phase, but also the sentencing phase if in fact it gets to that point. So it does complicate matters for defense counsel when you have the death penalty on the table.
Yeah, I imagine how difficult it is, especially in a case where this one has such overwhelming evidence. So there is a likelihood that we're going to see a guilty verdict. But sometimes how you handle the guilt phase, if you have this jury that's going to be the same jury, in some situations in different jurisdictions there may be a different jury, but in this case, same jury would hear the penalty phase. You don't want them to not like your client. You don't want the client to come off as a liar. That may even impact whether or not you let your client take the stand, because if they say I didn't do it and they find him guilty, then he's got to argue afterward, okay, I did do it, but don't give me death.
Yeah, I mean, defense counsel has to tread lightly, right? I mean, they have to certainly defend their client vigorously in attempting to get an acquittal, even though we don't think that's likely. And at the same time, they have to balance that fine line between showing a level of remorse or empathy toward the families and the victims' families here, so that you don't turn off the jury such that they are ready, willing, and able to just, impose the death penalty. So it is a fine line that defense counsel has to take in balancing presentation of the evidence, putting forth a zealous defense of their client, and at the same time thinking about trying to preserve his life to the extent that he is found guilty.
Certainly true. Michelle Thomas, stand by. We do have to squeeze in a break, but coming up, we've been following some breaking news all across the country. The death of OJ Simpson at the age of 76 and a verdict in the Apple River stabbings trial. We've got the latest there. Keep it right here on Court TV.
We are underway in the trial of Doomsday prophet Chad Daybell.
Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty against him.
Investigators have recovered human remains at Chad Daybell's residence.
There's no way, Morgan, I can never come up with this.
His wife, Lori Vallow Daybell, has already been convicted.
Now, will her husband end up with the same fate?
It's just so hard to know where the truth ends.
It's the Doomsday prophet, Chad Daybell, on trial.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. We are continuing to follow breaking news across the country. OJ Simpson has died at the age of 76 after a battle with prostate cancer. His family released a statement on his X, formerly known as Twitter account, saying that Simpson was surrounded by, quote, his children and grandchildren when he died. In 1995, the football star was acquitted of charges for killing his former wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ronald Goldman. They were both brutally stabbed to death the year prior to that 1995 verdict. This was in 1994 that they were killed at her home.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information.
An attorney for victim Ronald Goldman's family said that OJ Simpson, quote, died without penance. Let's bring in our guest that is standing by, trial attorney and family law attorney Michelle Thomas. Michelle, this was one of those days where the news had everyone scrambling around here at Court TV because really it changed the landscape. That trial and OJ Simpson being the kind of infamous criminal defendant, it changed the way people watch trials. It's one of the things that launched Court TV back in the 90s. Your thoughts on just that era that was marked by OJ Simpson?
Yeah, you know, Julia, I think all of us remember, who are old enough, remember exactly what we were doing, where we were when we saw the police chase of that white Ford Bronco, when the trial began and went on for months and months. I mean, I think it's just one of those incidents in time that marks history. And so today, to look at his death and, you know, reflect on his legacy, it's a complicated legacy. You know, on the one hand, he's sort of the greatest, you know, of all time. He's the GOAT in terms of football and all the records that he set, both in college and in the NFL, but he also has a very storied past. And I think that trial is really what galvanized the country, if not the world, around the interest in the justice system and watching trials, and certainly, to your point, put Court TV on the map. So it was really a memorable and remarkable time in history.
Yeah, Michelle, it didn't stop with the verdict. I mean, it's one of those remarkable verdicts where even the Supreme Court justices paused what they were doing at the Supreme Court to get a note to say what the verdict was. I mean, that's unheard of. You think about back in the 90s, people didn't have their cell phones so that they could text people. Everyone wanted to be in front of a television or get that information because it was so impactful. But the fascination with that trial didn't stop, and just the questioning of what happened, why it happened, and even a shift in public opinion as to whether or not he did it or not, did not do it. Your thoughts on just what transpired after that in terms of watching this trial and the documentaries made?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very polarizing case, primarily along the lines of racial divides, right? I mean, if you remember just a few years prior to this, there was a Rodney King situation that occurred in Los Angeles, and so there was already tension between, you know, law enforcement and the community. And then you have this OJ Simpson trial where there were racial epithets that were brought into evidence by Mark Furman, one of the officers. You know, so all of that was really very polarizing at that time. And so, you know, today when we reflect on it, the forensics have evolved so much and have advanced so much in terms of forensic evidence and the science. You know, there may have been a different verdict today as opposed to 28 years ago, but I do think that we saw the remnants for years to come based upon the racial tensions that were occurring at that time.
We will certainly continue to follow this story, but for now, let's go back into court in the case that we are following out of Boise, Idaho. The Doomsday Prophet murder trial. The defendant is Chad Daybell. He's charged with murdering his first wife, Tammy Daybell, and his new wife, Lori Vallow Daybell's children, JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan. On the stand, we're watching Detective Ray Hermosillo from the Rexburg Police Department. He searched for those missing children and even interviewed Chad Daybell.
Before I publish that, I'm going to place Exhibit 10A up again. And can you point to the general location of what you've described as the pet cemetery?
Right here. So can you have on the record and explain where it's pointing?
Yes, yeah, Detective, will you explain where you're pointing?
It's just east of this shop area and just north of the fire pit. So it's right through here.
And Your Honor, I do think that the state's first picture under State's Exhibit 11 is okay for public consumption.
It is. I just wanted to make sure our system was working as well, but Exhibit 11A is fine.
Detective, what did you observe in State's Exhibit 11A?
This is where we began excavating briefly. As you can see in this photograph, there's a small black dog statue next to the post. So that's where we had learned this was the pet cemetery area through talking to family members. And then there's just some tarps laid out for some of the soil. You can see in the back the markers that had been distinguished and laid out by ERT for the fire pit area that I had talked about earlier.
And Your Honor, I think at this point it's appropriate to turn to public access.
I agree.
Detective, Your Honor, I'm at a bit of a, I have no idea if this is, I can't see if this, well, I'll ask Detective, can you see that image in your monitor?
Yes.
Can you see most of it?
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury what's been marked as State's Exhibit 11B? What did you observe there?
Can I see? Is there a way I can use the pointer?
I have a suggestion also, Mr. Wood, just because I understand what you're doing to try to line that up since you can't see the monitor. Do you want to set a notepad or something on there and get it oriented and you could set on top of that just so that it's lined up?
And if I could have the screen for 1 moment, thank you, Your Honor, for that suggestion. Okay. Detective, what did you observe in State's Exhibit 11B?
It's hard to describe without the pointer, but I'll do my best. In the middle of that photograph, you can start to see the different color and the changes in soil from dry to a wet, moist dirt. You can start to see to the left just a little bit of that area. You can see the white piece sticking out and it's burnt on top, and that's charred bone that's starting to stick out, and all the little pieces next to it are pieces of burnt flesh, tissue, where we later determined were organs that were all kind of, that's the top of what was inside the bucket. So that's what we first started to see when we started to excavate.
And at this point, were you still using the hand tools?
Yes.
you explain for the jury what you observed in State's Exhibit 11C?
So as we started to excavate down further, some of the top of the mass of burnt flesh wasn't really attached to anything. And so when we would start to dig away towards the sides, it would kind of come apart. It wasn't part of that original mass. And so what you're looking at on this blue tarp is burnt flesh still attached to some bone. The upper left part of that section that you're looking at is part of the hip bone that still has burnt flesh attached to it, and dirt and just fatty burnt tissue.
You described for the jury what you observed in State's Exhibit 11D.
So when I talked about it started to take a roundish shape, this is what I'm referring to. And we dug around the sides of it, trying to get to the bottom. Because like I said, the goal was to get underneath, have 3 or 4 guys in there and just lift it onto the tarp. So that's what you're looking at in this photograph, is just
What a horrific discovery for this detective. We have to hit a pause button there because we have to squeeze in a break, but more of those gruesome details in the Doomsday Prophet murder trial is on the other side. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. Before we get you back into testimony from the Doomsday Prophet murder trial in Idaho, let's get you an update on the Slenderman case. It has a hearing that happened today in Waukesha, Wisconsin. 21-year-old Morgan Geyser. She's accused of stabbing a classmate to death nearly 10 years ago, and she's now asking a judge to release her from a mental institution. Now, Geyser and her friend, Anissa Wire, were 12 years old when they were lured by a 6th grade classmate, Peyton Leutner, to a park after a sleepover. Geyser then stabbed Leutner repeatedly while Wire urged her on. It's the second day of testimony from mental health experts who are arguing over whether or not she should be released from her sentence being committed to a mental institution. Let's take a look at the cross-examination of a psychologist who says that Geyser still poses a significant risk of bodily harm to herself and others.
In the moment of experiencing those symptoms, accurately describes them, articulates them to her treatment team, and her self-reporting is consistent with observed phenomena, let's say. In that moment of her actually experiencing these symptoms, is she truthful and accurate and forthcoming about those in the moment?
It appears so.
And so the difference, I guess, in the accuracy of historical reporting for her comes in her after-the-fact rationalization of what has or hasn't happened. Is that fair?
I think that's fair, yes.
Do you have any reason to doubt that she would continue to accurately report present tense to her treatment team any experiences that she's having, whether it be symptoms or difficulties, as they occur?
I think that there's not evidence to suggest that she hides symptoms. There's never been an indication of that. However, she is very, very motivated for conditional release. She's very in tune to the concerns that have been raised across time. And there is some indication of, say, wanting to change diagnoses, the labels that have been applied, which I would say are not necessarily that important, but wanting to do that out of a belief that that may assist her in her short and long-term goals.
Testimony like that not sounding really good for Geyser, but a short time ago, the second defense witness, a medical doctor who has interviewed Geyser, told the jury that she is eligible for conditional release. Let's get you back into court now, though. Our attention is turning to the Boise, Idaho case against Doomsday Prophet accused murderer in a murder trial. The investigation's lead detective in that case against Chad Daybell is on the stand now. Let's go in.
And Judge, could we approach for a sidebar case?
Yes.
All right, we've got to pause there inside of the courtroom because of a sidebar. Let's bring back in trial attorney and family law attorney Michelle Thomas. Michelle, I wanted to get your reaction to something that we have in terms of the evidence that's related to what we're hearing from this detective. He's talking about the search of Chad Daybell's property, the digging up of those remains. He's going through with this jury what they found, the flesh, the skull, the teeth. I mean, it's hard to even imagine what it was like for those excavators to go in. But let's listen to the jail call that happened not too long after, probably while this was all going on, between a Lori Vallow Daybell, who was behind bars, and Chad Daybell, who was not yet charged.
Hi, Dad. Hello. Are you okay?
So they're searching the property.
Are they seizing stuff again?
They're searching.
All about the tone, Michelle, the tone of his voice when he says they're searching. Your reaction?
Yeah, it's like he knows that they are about to find out what really went down, what really occurred in his backyard. It really does suggest the way that he is communicating, like you said, his tone, the intonation in his voice suggests that he is fully aware that these children were buried in his backyard, and that both he and Lori know exactly what he's alluding to when he's saying they're searching. And so it does implicate a level of guilt or culpability from my perspective.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that the jury is going to hear. Let's go back into the courtroom now. That sidebar broken up.
You can see some of the hand tools that we used just to the right of that hole. But that's what you're looking at, is just after we got that mass out, the wet soil.
Detective, what did you observe in States Exhibit 11G?
So these were part of a tile that kind of broke apart when we tried to lift it out of the ground. There's pieces of charred bone. There's parts of a skull on the bottom left, covered in dirt, and they're still burnt, rotting flesh still attached to the bone. So that's what you're looking at that point. These were the pieces that broke off.
Detective, I believe you testified that you assisted in transferring those remains to Madison County to the hospital, correct?
Correct. I followed behind in the corner.
Was Lieutenant Ball with you again?
He was.
Once you got up to the hospital, what did you do?
We observed the Fremont County coroner, Brenda Dye, transfer Tylee's remains into the morgue. The morgue was unlocked, but there was evidence they put up. And at that point, myself and Lieutenant Ball went back to the defendant Daybell's residence.
And what did you do when you got back there?
We assisted and made sure there were no other burial sites or anything that the ERT team needed assistance with. At that point, we decided that we were going to take JJ and Tylee to the Ada County Coroner's Office to have an autopsy performed. So roughly 4 p.m. on June 10th, 2020, it was decided that we were going to follow the county coroner with the remains of JJ and Tylee to the Ada County Coroner's Office for an autopsy the next morning.
And when did you arrive in Ada County, approximately?
Approximately 8 or 9 in the evening on June 10th.
And what did you do once you got there?
We went directly to the coroner's office, and JJ and Tylee were dropped off, and the coroner's office took custody of both JJ and Tylee.
So that was later in the evening.
Correct.
And was an autopsy performed that night?
No.
When was the autopsy?
Yeah, Judge, I'm going to object. There needs to be some foundation.
Overruled. If you know, you may answer.
The autopsy was performed June 11th, early morning hours.
Well, that was the next day.
Correct.
And were you present for that?
Yes, I was.
And where did that autopsy take place?
At the Ada County Coroner's Office.
So when you arrived at the coroner's office, what did you do first?
Initially, when we arrived, we had a little debrief with the medical examiner, Garth Warren. He told us what he expected.
Judge, objection.
Counselor,
Hearsay?
sustained.
You met with Dr. Ward.
Correct.
What was the purpose of that meeting?
To debrief us on what to expect that morning.
What did you do next?
We went to the room where the autopsy was performed, put the sanitary booties on our shoes, signed in on a whiteboard with our name and cell phone numbers. So he had a record of everybody that was in the room. And at that point, we stood back against the wall and observed the autopsy.
Now, as a detective, you don't perform an autopsy, correct?
Correct.
But you were able to see it take place.
That's correct.
We have to slip in a break, but we do have more testimony on the other side from Chad Daybell's trial there in Ada County, Idaho. The state, you see, is showing and telling the jury those graphic details, the exhibits we can't see, can't show on television, but it's all about what was happening in Chad Daybell's backyard, where JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan's remains were found. We'll testify next. Let's see.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a case allegedly driven by money, sex, and power, the trial of Chad Daybell. Cult-like religious beliefs surround this defendant as he stands trial for 3 murders. And Morgan Geyser pleaded guilty to stabbing and killing a classmate when she was a child. Now she is seeking release. We have the very latest from today's hearing in the Slender Man stabbing case.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
back to Court TV Live. Thanks so much for following along with us. We are watching the Doomsday Prophet murder trial for Chad Daybell. He's accused of 3 deaths, the deaths of his new wife's children, Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow, and also his first wife, Tammy Daybell. Let's go in where we are watching the detective who was on this case, the lead detective who discovered the bodies of JJ and Tylee Ryan in the backyard of Chad Daybell. He's on the stand taking the jury through those gruesome details.
One of his team members brought out the body bag. And I recognized it to be the same body bag that we took from defendant Daybell's backyard that day because it still had dirt on it. It still had the same lock. And at that point, they opened the body bag and revealed the same black plastic and small body that appeared to be in the black plastic.
And then what did you observe?
Dr. Warren and his team cut down the middle of the black plastic to open up what was inside. At that time, I observed a small child with duct tape on his head from his chin to his forehead area, tightly wrapped around his head. He had red pajama pants on, red pajama shirt. He had his arms folded this way across his body. And there was duct tape from elbow all the way around to his other elbow. He had his ankles also bound with duct tape. He was still wearing his nighttime pull-up diaper. He had black socks with the word Skechers in orange. I could tell that he was going through various states of decomposition based on his skin color.
Judge, I'm going to object. Or else he doesn't have the experience to make a determination about the levels of decomposition. He's speculating.
I'll sustain the objection and strike the final part of the answer about decomposition, Mr. Wood.
All right. Detective, what did the body's skin look like?
The skin was sloughing. It appeared to be bluish green, black, yellow. And through my training experience, going through and handling different dead bodies at different stages of decomposition, that's what I read.
Judge, I'm going to object again. There's been no foundation for him to make that sort of medical assessment. He's not a medical doctor.
Your Honor, my argument would be that's not a medical assessment. It makes it on his training experience.
I'll overrule the objection. If you'd like to cross further, you'll have a chance, Mr. Pryor. The objection is overruled. The foundation laid in the previous response.
Detective, once this the body was taken out of the bag and you made the observations that you've just described, what happened next?
Dr. Warren and his team then cut the white plastic that was wrapped around his head and duct taped. They cut down the middle to reveal what was underneath. And at that point, I observed another piece of duct tape stretched from JJ's jawline to jawline over his mouth. He also cut the several layers of duct tape from his arms, and it revealed some more duct tape that had his wrist bound underneath all those layers of duct tape. He then took his bottom pajamas off and shirt, and it also revealed the nighttime pull-up diaper he was still wearing.
Now, Detective, you spoke about the duct tape and bag over the head, correct?
Correct.
And you've been referring to this as JJ.
Yes.
Until that duct tape and bag were removed, though, were you able to identify him as JJ?
No, once they removed the duct tape in the bag, through looking at all the photographs for the last 8 months of JJ, I recognized him to be the same little boy laying on that table as JJ Vallow. He had the same hairstyle, shorter on the sides, longer on top. At that point, I recognized him as JJ.
Once the clothing was removed, what did you observe happened next?
Dr. Warren pointed out some bruising on his arms.
Oh, so much emotion from this detective just listening to those moments. We have more of that testimony in Chad Daybell's trial. Don't go anywhere. This is a quick break. You'll hear more testimony on the other side. This is Court TV, your front row seat to justice.